Okay, guys, I have all the data from Philadelphia, all the tabulations done over time for the entire week after Election Day. And I have discovered the way Dominion actually distributes the votes. And it transfers, it does fraction magic, which is, I'm sure many of you heard about it already, but it actually transfers fractions between precincts. So, here, this is the original data from the New York Times data feed. You'll see this starts at November 4th at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. That's when everything went crazy, remember? And you see, you'll get dates is all the way up to, this is November 7th. And somewhere in here there's like November 9th. So it's an entire week of data, every timestamp of every tabulation for the total votes, for Biden's votes, and Trump's votes. Now, Biden's votes and Trump's votes don't always add up to the total because you have a third-party candidate. And I discovered that the fraction logic, what it does is if it sets a specific number of votes that Trump is allowed to get, an integer, out of a total number of votes, and then it puts a minimum on Biden, and then the remainder can be split evenly between the third-party candidate or to Biden. So I took only Philadelphia, only Philadelphia's timestamps, and then I sorted them by the, it's called the major ratio. The major ratio is Trump's votes divided by the total votes. Okay? The second way it was sorted after the major ratio, the second priority was the date and time. And then by the precinct. I found a lot of irregularities. I'm only going to show you 9 exhibits of these irregularities. But there's hundreds and hundreds of them just on the day of November 4th. So this data is only Philadelphia's data on the day of November 4th. See, this says 11:04. It's all November 4th. Now there's 90,000 rows. There's 90,000 entries for November 4th for Philadelphia. And before I get into the Dominion vote switching, let's just look at something that's statistically very strange, even in this sheet. So, remember, there's 90,000 rows, and it's not until row 40,000, that's half the sheet, until Trump even receives 10% of the votes in the precincts. It's not until row 60-something thousand, 65, 63,000, until Trump starts to get a quarter of the votes. We're already 2/3 down the sheet. Trump doesn't get a third of the votes until row 70,000. He doesn't even start getting 50% of the votes until near the end, around 80,000. And then row 80,000 to 90,000. The last 10,000 rows are the only entries where Trump receives more votes than Biden, and by very, very little. So we're going to look at some particular exhibits here of the shenanigans that I found. And this is how I have finally figured out how Dominion works. So Exhibit 1. This starts on row 32,249. Okay, sorry. Starts on row 8,300. This is the first exhibit. November 4th, Philadelphia. So, 4 precincts at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they report a ratio of 1 to 48. So Trump gets 1 vote exactly for every 48 votes. That's this right here. So now that's possible. So at first it doesn't. There's nothing weird about that. You have 4 precincts that report it. What makes it weird is that this ratio of 1 to 48, when it stops, because it eventually should stop, and it stops at 10 o'clock. It stops at 8 o'clock in the afternoon, 8 o'clock p.m. The original precincts that this ratio of 1 to 48 were occurring in, which was precincts 613, 5018, 5026, and 5923. It transfers that ratio of 1 to 48 to precinct 176 and 2816. And the difference in time is less than 5 minutes. So we're to believe that these 4 precincts that held this ratio for many hours, which is normal because that means they didn't update the tabulation yet. When they finally update near the end of the hour, 8 o'clock, the exact same ratio appears in 2 more districts. Now, if this was the only example in the whole spreadsheet of this happening, with this very short time interval, then I wouldn't be making this video. So now we're going to look at another exhibit here. And this one is really, really suspicious. We see at 7 o'clock in the morning, precincts 12-4, 12-8, and 60-13 report they have a 1 to 18 ratio. So Trump gets 1 vote exactly for every 18 votes here. Exactly. It's not even a fraction. So that's at 7 o'clock in the morning. At 9 o'clock in the morning, these original 3 precincts, 12-4, 12-8, 60-13, that ratio gets transferred in the same hour to these 3 precincts. So basically on the next global update citywide, it transfers to precincts 13, 23, 36, 51, 7. So that's at 9 o'clock, 9:30. That stays that way until 2 o'clock, 2:30. Then these 3 precincts, within a 10-minute time, so this is the global update, okay? When it updates globally, the whole Dominion software across the entire city, it transfers that 1 to 48 ratio from these 3 precincts into 1216, into District 1216. Now, if there were as many hours between this same ratio occurring, there would be nothing suspicious. You're going to have a ratio of 1 to 48 occur multiple times. But they shouldn't be within 10 minutes of each other. Or generally within the same hour. That's what makes it suspicious. So now precinct 1216 holds that ratio until 10 o'clock at night, and it transfers it within the same 5-minute interval to precinct 4710. What would have been more normal, for instance, is if precinct 4710 got the same ratio earlier in the day, and then both of those precincts were reporting that number, meaning that this one hadn't updated. But since what you see here is that there's almost no time difference between these two precincts reporting the same ratio, so it actually transferred the fraction 1 to 18, one vote per 18 votes, Trump to the total, to this precinct 4710 at around 10 o'clock. And then it's saved that way until midnight. And wait until I start, tomorrow I'm going to analyze this not just for November 4th, but for every day of the week. I'm going to find all the examples, by the way. That's Exhibit 3. Okay, I thought I had 2 exhibits there. I did. It's just up here. This is the 3rd exhibit. So this is a ratio of 4 to 65. To 65, the greatest common factor of the denominator, which is the total votes, is 13. And we see that precinct 26 at 7 o'clock in the morning holds that ratio. Then on the next update, it transfers it to precincts 20. I should put this in gray. It transfers that ratio simultaneously of 4 to 65, which is very unusual because of the prime number 13 in the denominator, to 4 different precincts. So at 7 o'clock it starts with that, which is fine. You have to start with something. But then it transfers that ratio all at the same time to these 4 precincts. Let's go to Exhibit 4. Exhibit 4, the ratio is 3 to 48. And we see that precinct 3417 holds this ratio from 7 o'clock in the morning until 9 o'clock. And then at 9:30, this seems to be the theme. It switches around 9:30, right? It starts at 7, and then the ratio starts at 7 o'clock, if you go back in the video and listen. And then the next switch happens at 9 to 9:30. So it transfers the ratio 3 to 48. That means Trump gets 3 votes for every 48 total. From precincts 3417 to precincts 1112 and 3636. Then at 3 o'clock, it transfers that ratio from 11, 12, and precincts 3636 within the same global tick of the whole city, about 10 minutes, to precincts 16, 8, and 25. Then at 10 o'clock at night, precinct 6001 gets added to this ratio. Now that's actually not suspicious. Believe it or not, that's actually a good thing. That works in the favor of our adversaries. Not the whole example here, this whole exhibit, just this part of the exhibit. So that means that precinct 61 got this ratio of 3 to 48 towards the end of the night. And then it got lumped in with the other 2 precincts, so that no transfer has occurred yet. We just added a precinct. So it's perfectly fine for this extra precinct to come in the middle of nowhere with that ratio. If you go over to the global sheet, since, you know, most of it is okay. That's generally what you see for these things. So we give precinct 6001 the benefit of the doubt. Until we notice that all three of those precincts, 16, 8, 25, and 61, simultaneously stop reporting that ratio at the exact same time. And that's near the end of the hour at 10 o'clock. And then it transfers that ratio to the precincts 43-9 and 52-14. And it stays that way until midnight. So we started with precinct 6001 having the benefit of the doubt of being the only legitimate entry in this fraudulent exhibit. And then it turns out that it's actually part of the fraud. That's sad. Okay. Let's go to the next exhibit. Again, we start at 7 in the morning. We have a ratio of 4 to 63. The greatest common factor of all these columns is 63. That's just really weird. But anyway, so we have this 4, that means Trump here again is getting 4 votes for every 63 total votes. So at 7 o'clock we start, and then again at this 9 o'clock to 9:30 you have this global update, and it transfers this ratio to these two precincts. So from 6111, that holds the original ratio, 4 to 63, it transfers to 13.5 and precinct 6122. 1305 and 13.5 and 6122. Now again, if this was the only example of this happening, it wouldn't be that suspicious. And we don't see this ratio transferred multiple times like we did in the other exhibits. So it's possible that this one is legitimate. This may not be fraudulent. It could just be a weird occurrence. So we'll give them the benefit of the doubt on that one, but it's weird. Alright, so exhibit, this is the 6th exhibit, and we get this ratio of 5 to 31, which is something a computer would do because it's a prime number to a prime number. And by the way, all these columns total, they can all be divided by 31. So we get the precincts 13 and 38 start with this ratio of 5 to 31 at 7 in the morning. And then there is a jump of many, many hours, which is good. Like, it's a good thing, means there's no fraud occurring. So we can say that these entries, these here, is actually not fraudulent. But then we continue to analyze it for county, for district number 117 starting at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And we notice that this ratio transfers. So this is district 117. It transfers this to districts 36-9 and 37-10 within the same 5-minute slot. This is near the end of 8 o'clock in the evening. This seems to be a very common time when the global update happens in the other exhibits. So that looks pretty suspicious, but it's still plausible. It could technically happen. So these exhibits here, Exhibit 2 was an example of something that absolutely cannot happen. If we go back for a moment. You can't have that many transfers within minutes of each other, or within the same hour of the same ratio. That just can't happen. Okay, sheet 3. Let's take a look up here. This is the ratio of 1 to 5, so what I did was I just scrolled until I got to 20%, because I wanted to make this video while I was still young. So I went to 20%, which is the ratio I wanted to see. What happened at that time, and we see that precinct 530 reports a split of 1 to 5, so 1 vote for Trump for every vote overall. And at 9:30, that ratio is transferred to precincts 1-5, 513, 524, and 19-2. And then it's transferred again at 3 o'clock to precincts 2516 and 3629. Then it's transferred again at 10 o'clock at night to precinct 4818. Very strange. To me, that's fraud. That's like Exhibit 2. So Exhibit 2 and Exhibit 9 are the strongest examples so far in this video of things that just can't happen. And I actually just went looking for it. I just said, what happens to 20% in the big sheet? And I found fraud. And in general, it's not like it was hard for me to find these examples. I literally just went like eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a tiger by the toe, and stopped. And then would find a bunch of numbers, like here's 46 to 46. You just saw me do this randomly in the video. And you just see all these examples of ratios being transferred within minutes of each other to different precincts. So here's 1 to 6, that's 1.6 repeating. Before I go to the next exhibit, so let me show you. Okay, so that starts at 7 in the morning. Hell, let's just do an example. So this is the ratio 1 to 6, right? So let's see if so let's copy this. I'm just going to do an example live. Oh, look. I don't even have a 9th exhibit, so you know what? It's a good thing we're doing this live, because I wouldn't have had a 9th exhibit to show you. Alright, let's put that out. So let's look at what's funny here. So this is when the ratio is 1 to 6. I assume the common denominator here is 6. Just trying to see if I can get something better out of it. Well, don't have time to figure that out for this video because this is the actual video right now. So let's see, 720, 1540, 21. When does 7 repeat? Right here. Okay, so it's 5 precincts. Get this ratio at 7 in the morning. 7 to 40. So it's switched here somewhere. Okay, so this is the first block. Transfer happens here. dark for the video. So this transfer happens at 9 o'clock in the morning, at 9:30 to these two precincts. Again, it's that same timestamp of 9 to 9:30, around the time of the global update. 1910, 1910. Here it is. Here's the next transfer. This ratio of 1 to 6. We still didn't do Exhibit 8 yet. We'll go back to Exhibit 8. Exhibit 9 is a live exhibit. You can see it's not very hard for me to find these things. Once again, it's too dark. So this is a 3 o'clock. That's 15. 15:00 is 3 o'clock. This is 10 minutes later. So it transfers this ratio again from precincts 1910, 4223 to 1717 and 2303. And to 66. Okay. So this is 3 precincts it transferred it to. So it transfers it from 2 precincts to 3 precincts. Pretty sure that will go to the end. That would be scary. Oh my god. It keeps transferring it. 762 is what I'm looking for. That's clever too. They try to hide it. So watch this. I just found like another funny way they try to do this, to hide it from you. So this is precinct 717, 2303, and 6206. These are the ones that receive the transfer from these 2 precincts, and that goes on until 10 o'clock at 10:40. And then on that global reset in the previous exhibits, about 5 minutes later at 10:47, transfers them to this precinct 6226. Notice how close that is to the number 6206. I'm pretty sure that's done deliberately to confuse somebody visually, because I almost overlooked that transfer. So there's a live example I just did for you, and I just really just went to somewhere randomly in the sheet, sort of, because I was kind of looking for the fraction 1/6. But almost random. Like I could, if I wanted to, but we don't have time in the video, I could literally just stop the scroll bar in the big data set, just anywhere, and just find an example, like 38.78. This fraction here, 173, I'm pretty sure that's a prime number. 449. It's for the prime number. What the hell? Like, how does that happen? It better be it better be the same precinct the whole way through. Okay, at least it's the same precinct, so it's fine. But you can find examples of the same ratio occurring in multiple precincts pretty much anywhere, when you just by dropping your cursor in the middle of the sheet somewhere. We'll go back to Exhibit 8. Anyway, so let's go back to Exhibit 8. That wasn't covered yet. So we have here the ratio of 1 to 4. So that means the major ratio is 25%, so Trump gets 1 vote to every 4 total. And we see that's reported at 7 in the morning. And precincts 1, 2, 15, 17, 23, 9, 45, 13, 62, 15. At 7 o'clock in the morning on November 4th. That ratio persists until 8 o'clock, about an hour. Actually until 9 o'clock. So remember, at 9:06, 9:10 is when this transfer keeps happening. And it transfers that ratio of 1 to 4 to Philadelphia District 2-1. Pretty weird. Then at 3 o'clock, it let me see, let me make sure. And it holds it. Okay, so there's a 5-hour jump from here to here, which is a good thing. That means it wasn't transferred to another precinct immediately. Let's take a look here. So this is probably clean because 1 to 4 is not that hard of a ratio to get. So Exhibit 8 is something that's plausible. I definitely wouldn't bring this one to court. But the last exhibit that we did here, Exhibit 9. So the last exhibit we did at random, Exhibit 7 was pretty bad. Especially since the ratio was weird, 3 to 48. Exhibit 4. Let me explain how I think this whole system works. So let's just take the ratios we see here. We're going to write them down. 1 to 48. 1 to 18. 4 to 65. 3 to 48. Very strange ratio. 4 to 63. 5 to 31. 4 to 63. 5 to 31. The last ratio is a 1 to 5, 1 to 4, 1 to 6. Now, a couple of these exhibits were plausible, but for the sake of this example, how I think it works, we're just going to say that they were all fraudulent. Okay, so this is how I think it works. Needs a certain amount of votes it needs to flip. Total amount to flip. Okay? And let's say that it needs to flip them at a ratio because Trump had such a huge margin. Let's say it needs to flip them. It needs to make sure that Biden gets about 66 votes to every 30 votes, every 33 votes that Trump gets, with 1 vote left over for a third-party candidate, or it can just be added to Biden. And what it does, it just splits into blocks, these fractional blocks. What was there, 9? So let's do the 9 exhibits. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now there's obviously in this gigantic sheet, these oddities happen many, many times. There are many more exhibits, hundreds of exhibits in here, I would imagine, where you have ratios being transferred. But for the sake of this, of my theory, we're just going to pretend these are the only 9 ratios that got transferred on November 4th. So it says we're going to take a certain ratio. So this box will have 1 to 48 ratio of ballots. I'm just going to kind of make the numbers up because I don't want to keep going back to the machine too much. 4 to 65. So X equals total amount to flip. Actually, we'll just read them off. 3 to 48, 4 to 63. And this wouldn't be very hard for a computer to do. 4 to 63. 5 to 31. I purposely didn't want to make them the same size. I just sort of dragged the cursor because they're not the same size in reality either. 1 to 6, 1 to 5, 1 to 4. So what I think it does, I'm pretty sure this is what it does. It says I'm going to take the total amount of votes that needs to be flipped, and I'm going to separate them like this. So it will split the X into 9 parts that it needs. So let's just say to make up the amount. Biden needs 100,000 votes. Let's do something that goes with the ratio. He needs 200,000 votes. And Trump needs 100,000 votes. This is how it needs to change the margins. So it redistributes the number 200,000 and 100,000 into these boxes in accordance to these 9 ratios. And in order, and then, okay, so what it does then, right, and this is where it gets really sadistic. It then says, we're going to take just one of these boxes. We'll do 2 of these boxes. It says for the box 1 to 48, we're going to split that into, let's say, 3 precincts. We'll do the 4 to 65 because that's like the weirdest number. So this is what the minion does. It says I'm going to split this into 3 precincts. And I'm going to change the amount of votes that come in. And then when there's a global update, it says I don't want to look suspicious. So I'm going to transfer the workload of this ratio 4 to 65 to 2 other precincts. So it goes from 3 precincts to 2. And then it transfers the ratio again. So this is time going down. It says, okay, well, we still don't have as many votes yet as we need, so we'll transfer it to two more precincts. The amount of precincts it transfers it to is irrelevant. So I'm going to transfer this ratio to these 2 precincts. Then I'm going to transfer it to, we'll do one more branch, let's say to 3 new precincts. So these branches are what's happening over time. So it passes it through all these, transfers these ratios to these precincts, these sets of precincts over time. So let's say, so 4 to 65 means Trump needs, we take that number 100,000, right? 4 to 65. 4 divided by 65, I have a handheld calculator in front of me, is 6.15%, so times 100,000. So the computer knows it needs to get in total 6,153. Not exactly sure how that works there. Let me take a look. Oh, I see. Four parts of 65. Well, it wouldn't be that complicated, but it's going to distribute. So we're just going to have to make up the number here. That's 4 to 65. So let's just multiply it by 50. So we need to get 200 votes for Trump in this box here. And needs to get 3,200 votes for Biden. So that's the ratio. So that's what that's what Dominion is trying to get into this overall red box of 4 to 65. That's just a hypothetical. And when the votes finally add up in a way to where Trump gets 200 total over time, when Trump hits around 200 votes and Biden hits around 3,200 votes, it then stops that ratio. It doesn't need that proportion anymore because it milked this ratio of 465 for everything that for all the votes that it needed. And then this box would now be satisfied. So now we'll put, now it's satisfied and it doesn't need that proportion anymore. So again, let's go over how I think this works. So you have a total amount of votes you need to flip to catch for Biden to take out Trump's margin. So let's say hypothetically it needs 200,000 votes for every 100,000 votes that Trump gets to overtake his margin. And it splits that into these random, pretty much random integer ratios. That's what makes it so suspicious, right? It's not like, I mean, technically they're all going to be integer ratios, but like these types of ratios, I don't know how else to explain. So like, it's not like you're getting a lot of prime numbers, right? So if I did the prime number theorem, right, a percentage of these numbers should be prime in this T column, and they're not. I'm not counting the repetitions for when they don't update. So if we took all the unique denominators, and we said how many of these are prime numbers, I bet we would get less prime numbers than we're supposed to. Okay? Oh, that's for another video. So let's go back to here. So, okay, it takes this thing and then it splits it into many different of these red boxes, right? That's how the algorithm works, of all these ratios. And then what it does is it assigns that ratio to several precincts. And in order to hide its shenanigans, it transfers that ratio to different sets of precincts throughout the day. And once the number is reached that it wants, it stops transferring that number. Now, I don't know how true that is, because this only goes to November 4th. Well, I know that's true. And then, but my data sheet goes out to the 9th, or the 10th, or maybe even the 11th. So I'm pretty sure, I wouldn't doubt if we see the ratio 4 to 65 occur from not just on the November 4th, but all the way until the end of the counting the tabulations. I wouldn't doubt it. And it just keeps transferring this number to multiple precincts, and many other ratios as well, with little to no time between the jumps. So that's how I think that this fraction magic actually works. So the magic occurs right here, and then it hides its own paper trail, so to speak, by switching it between the precincts, and even being so clever, as we saw in the last exhibit I did live, to transfer it to precincts and almost have the exact same number. So 62.6 to 62.26. So any human being like you and me going over the data might not even notice the transfer. So that's my theory on how Dominion is working and how it's flipping votes. So it's not just taking every precinct and applying one ratio to it. It's taking multiple sets of precincts and applying multiple ratios, such that when they all come back to a certain number, they add up to the total number that is required to flip the margin. So that's the end of the video. I apologize for some of the stuff going on in the kitchen. And, well, that's it. I'm going to upload all the files so you guys can check it yourself, so you know I didn't fabricate this data for some political agenda. I just took this data straight off the New York Times feed. Like I said, when you get the file, what you're going to do is you're going to sort it by, you want to sort it first, you want to sort it by time, when the initial file, and then by the locality, and then by the precinct. Then you'll copy and paste the dates you want. So you want all of Pennsylvania, you want all of Philadelphia on November 4th. That's the segment you want after you sort it into a new spreadsheet. And you're going to create an array formula that divides Trump's votes by the total vote. Then you're going to resort the data again by that major ratio that you entered, then by the date and time, and then by the precinct. And that's how you get this information. The same way I got it. Alright, I'm going to close the video and start uploading.